Hi, I'm Michael Manring. Thanks so much for checking out this Starlix video. In this video today we're going to be talking about the solo pieces from my album Thonk. On Thonk I had 7 ensemble tunes and then 4 tunes for unaccompanied bass guitar. And in the unaccompanied pieces I used several unusual techniques and some different ways of playing the bass. And I'll describe some of those today and talk about some of those techniques and show you some of the techniques I used so that you can play these pieces if you'd like, or if you prefer you can just use some of these ideas in your own music. Probably the first thing that we should talk about is this bass. This bass is called the Zahn Michael Manring Hyperbass, and it is kind of a strange instrument. I designed it with my friend Joe Zahn, and then he built it for me. And we had a bunch of unusual ideas that we wanted to try out, and we kind of put a bunch of them on this bass. We designed the bass to be especially good for doing solo work, for both recording and performing solo pieces. And so, there are a number of things about it that make it good for that. The first thing you can probably notice is that the fingerboard is especially long. A standard Fender bass fingerboard would end right about here, and a 2-octave fingerboard would end right about here. This fingerboard is just shy of 3 octaves. And the reason that we did this was primarily because we realized that normally on a fretless bass, the space between the end of the fingerboard and the pickup is just wasted space. There's nothing going on there. We figured we may as well extend the fingerboard all the way to where we knew we wanted the pickup to be. And if I could find anything to play up there, great. But we would avoid just wasting the space on the instrument. And this has ended up being kind of a nice feature to have, because bass being a relatively low instrument, I often find myself playing melodies, and wishing I had just one more note. And that's never happened on this bass, because there's so many notes up there. It's pretty challenging to play up in this, 3rd octave of the fingerboard. So it's not a place I spend, that much time, but it is kind of a nice feature to have. Well, the next subject I'd like to talk about is altered tunings. Altered tunings have been a big source of inspiration for me and a great way to kind of look at all the different colors that are within the bass and to pull out different kinds of voices from the instrument. When you change the tuning of a string, you're changing the tension of the string, and that causes the string to vibrate in a different way. And to me, a string that's very loose has a very different feeling to it than a string that's tuned very tight. So it really is a way to open up some different colors from your bass. But of course, if you're talking about changing the tunings, you're often talking about changing the intervallic relationships between the strings. And this can really mess with your head because all the patterns that you've worked so hard to understand, all the scales and chord arpeggios and stuff, all that pretty much goes out the window, and the bass can be pretty confusing, pretty bewildering. But I think it's worth going through that trouble, because using altered tunings opens up so many new chord voicing possibilities and melodic voicing possibilities. I find that I actually think differently in different tunings. Often ideas will occur to me in an altered tuning that really wouldn't occur to me in standard tuning, and different kinds of fingerings and so on. Also, when you use altered tunings, you get whole new sets of harmonics to work with. You can also extend the range of the instrument, either higher by tuning higher or tuning lower. So there are just a whole lot of benefits to using altered tunings that I find make them especially valuable on the instrument. And really, altered tunings have become a major aspect of my conception of the bass. Now, you may be able to notice that the strings on this instrument are very, very light gauge. In fact, this low string is an 052, then an 042, an 032, and the high string's a 20. It's actually unwound. And the reason I use such light gauge strings on this instrument, I don't use strings this light on all my instruments, but the reason I use them on this instrument is to give me more altered tuning possibilities. In general, I find that the lighter gauge a string is, the wider tuning range it has. These strings actually will go down to standard tuning, to E, A, D, G, although that's kind of the dead bottom of their range. I don't like to take them too much lower than that. But they'll go pretty easily, they'll go an octave above that. So this gives me an enormous tuning range to work with and greatly increases the number of alto tunings that I can get this bass into. And that's, in addition to my basses that have regular gauge strings. So it just gives me a lot more choices to work with. Now, if you're interested in working with the tunings that we're going to be talking about today or playing these pieces, you really probably should get a set of strings like this. The set I use is available from D'Addario, but I believe other companies make them as well. You can put these kind of strings actually on any bass. They're real long, and you can just take the strings off your bass and put a set like this on, and it'll work pretty well. If you find you're really interested in these kind of tunings and these kind of ideas, you might want to actually dedicate a bass to this kind of set of strings, as I have with the hyperbass. And that's kind of nice because you can actually set up the bass specifically for the different kind of action and different tension that this kind of set of strings has. But it's really not necessary to do that. If you prefer, you can just put them on for when you want to work on these ideas and take them off and put your other strings back on.